Ladies and gentlemen, now let me tell y'all something real quick. When you start shining a little brighter, when you stop taking mess from folks, when you finally realize your worth, oh, it's a beautiful thing. But let me warn you, everybody ain't gonna clap for that glow up, especially not a narcissist. See, when a narcissist sees you getting too strong, too confident, too blessed to be stressed, oh, they gonna switch up real fast. They ain't gonna cheer for you. They're gonna plot on you. They'll try to guilt trip you, gaslight you, make you question your strength. All because your strength exposes their weakness. But today, we're going to talk about how to stand firm, how to hold your head high, how to recognize that their reaction ain't about your worth. It's about their fear of losing control. So buckle up, because today we're going to get free. And we're going to do it with our heads held high and our spirit unshakable. That narcissists thrive on control, not connection. This is one of the most crucial truths to understand when dealing with someone who operates from a narcissistic mindset. On the surface, a narcissist may appear charming, charismatic, and even deeply interested in your well-being. They may flatter you, make you feel seen, and draw you in with intense attention and affection. But underneath all that, the engine running their behavior isn't love or empathy. It's the desire to control. Control gives them the illusion of superiority. When they feel like they can influence your thoughts, your emotions, your decisions, they feel powerful. That power is their oxygen. They don't want a real balanced relationship where both people are seen, heard, and respected. They want to dominate, even if it's subtle. Sometimes they don't even realize that's what they're doing. It's just how they've learned to survive. They feed off validation. And when they can't get it naturally, they try to extract it by manipulating others. What this means is that every interaction with a narcissist is a transaction. Every compliment has a motive. Every generous act is a setup. They're always calculating, what can I get from this person? It might be attention, admiration, loyalty, or even silence. If you play the role they've designed for you, if you stay agreeable, if you don't question them, if you applaud when they demand it, they'll keep you close. But the moment you start thinking for yourself, the moment you set boundaries or stop responding to their emotional bait, they see it as a threat. That threat is what triggers the narcissist's darker tactics. Because, again, this isn't about a bond, it's about a leash. The leash must stay tight. Your independence, your strength, your clarity, those things weaken their grip. And narcissists hate that. They will often respond with confusion tactics, things like gaslighting, guilt tripping, playing the victim, or using emotional blackmail. They might say things like, oh, you've changed, or why are you being so selfish? But the truth is, you've only stopped giving them control. You'll notice a pattern if you observe long enough. Narcissists are attracted to strong people, but only as long as they can mold that strength into something that serves them. They love confident individuals at first because they enjoy the challenge of breaking them down. Or if they can get a strong person to doubt themselves, to lean on them for approval, it feeds their ego. But if that strong person refuses to shrink, if they start speaking up, walking away, or simply living without needing constant affirmation, that's when the narcissist starts panicking. They don't know how to connect without controlling. Vulnerability makes them deeply uncomfortable. Empathy feels like weakness to them. So instead of trying to grow or evolve, they double down. They'll manipulate situations to make you feel unstable, or they'll try to turn others against you to isolate you. This isn't love. This isn't even real conflict. It's a war for power, and they're terrified of losing. Another thing to recognize is how they test your boundaries in small ways at first. They may ignore your no once or twice just to see if you'll enforce it. They may tell a joke that hurts your feelings and then accuse you of being too sensitive. These aren't random behaviors. They're experiments. They're testing whether they can chip away at your sense of self without consequence. Because if they can, they know they've got a foothold. And once they get in, it becomes harder and harder to spot the manipulation. You start doubting your instincts. You start making excuses for them. You become conditioned to walk on eggshells just to keep the peace. That's the kind of environment narcissists thrive in. They create chaos so they can control the calm. They stir drama so they can appear like the voice of reason. They break you down just enough so that your self-worth depends on their approval. And if you ever try to break free from that dynamic, they often don't fight for the relationship. They fight to regain control of you. Understanding their core drive is control, not connection, helps you stop personalizing their actions. Their coldness isn't because you failed. Their anger isn't because you did something wrong. Their silence, their withdrawal, their sudden shift from love to cruelty, it's all part of the control strategy. You could be the kindest, most loyal person in the world, and it wouldn't matter. If you don't stay under their influence, they feel threatened. What makes it especially hard is that narcissists often present themselves as victims. They'll say you're the one who's changed. You're the one who's cold. You're the one who's ungrateful. They flip the narrative because that's how they regain control of the story. They can't afford to look in the mirror, so they hand you the mirror and make you question what you see. That's why clarity is everything. Once you recognize that their love was never unconditional, that their kindness came with strings, you stop blaming yourself for the fallout. You stop trying to fix a relationship that was built on imbalance from the beginning. Your strength threatens their illusion of superiority. When you begin to stand in your truth, own your worth, and walk with confidence, a narcissist doesn't see growth. They see danger, not because you've harmed them, but because your self-assurance undermines the fragile foundation of their ego. Narcissists survive by believing they are above others. Their self-image is inflated, but it's not real confidence. It's a mask covering deep insecurity. When you show up as someone who cannot be easily manipulated, someone who sees through the performance, it forces them to confront the idea that they are not as powerful as they thought. This is why narcissists often gravitate towards strong people initially. They see something magnetic in your independence, your ambition, your intelligence. But that admiration is conditional. It only lasts as long as they believe they can outshine you, shape you, or take credit for your life. Once it becomes clear that your power is your own and that you're not easily influenced, their admiration can quickly turn into resentment. It's not your strength that's the problem. It's that your strength exposes a lie they're living. A narcissist builds their identity on a shaky foundation. They need others to affirm their greatness constantly. They surround themselves with people who will either worship them or stay small around them. But when someone shows up and refuses to shrink, refuses to stay quiet, refuses to prioritize their feelings over their own truth, it feels like an attack. Not because you've attacked them, but because your presence challenges their narrative. You didn't play the role they cast you in. You didn't stay in the box they built for you. That alone is enough to set them off. They don't want equals. They want followers. They don't want partners. They want props. They want props. So when you show up as whole, unshaken, and self-defined, it's not just inconvenient, it's unacceptable to them. You force them to see that they are not the only source of brilliance in the room. And for someone who measures their value by comparison, that is intolerable. They have to be the smartest, the strongest, the most successful, the most admired. Your presence makes that harder to maintain. And so they turn against you. They may not do it openly at first. Often it starts subtly. Little digs, backhanded compliments, undermining your ideas in front of others, making you feel like your confidence is arrogance, like your assertiveness is aggression. They'll reframe your strength as a flaw because they can't stand to see you comfortable in it. And if they can't shake your confidence with subtle tactics, they escalate. They may start spreading doubt about you to others. They may try to isolate you from your support system. They may use your past vulnerabilities as weapons against you. But the root of it all is fear. Your strength reminds them of what they lack. It reflects back to them the authenticity they don't possess. Narcissists are performers, and when someone walks into the room being real, being grounded, being unapologetically themselves, it disrupts the script. Suddenly, the mask doesn't look so convincing. The control they've built starts to slip because you're no longer playing along. That illusion of superiority can't survive in the presence of someone who refuses to play small. Narcissists don't just want to feel important, they want to feel more important than you. That's why they compete with their partners, why they sabotage their friends, why they try to dominate conversations. It's not enough for them to win, they need others to lose. So when you rise, when you evolve, when you shine without asking for their permission or their praise, they see it as rebellion. They see it as disrespect. Not because you disrespected them, but because you dared to see yourself clearly. And that clarity makes the illusion harder to maintain. They'll shift from praise to punishment when you outgrow them. At first, a narcissist will make you feel like you're everything they ever wanted. They'll shower you with compliments, make grand gestures, and elevate you with words that seem too good to be true, because they are. That initial phase, often called love bombing, isn't rooted in genuine admiration. It's a strategy. It's how they hook you, how they figure out what makes you tick, and how they convince you that they're safe, supportive, and emotionally invested. They use praise as a tool of control, because if they can lift you up, they believe they can control how and when to tear you down. During this phase, the narcissist studies you. They learn what you like, what you dream about, what wounds you carry, not so they can love you better, but so they can use that knowledge later. Everything they give in the beginning has a string attached. The compliments, the encouragement, the seeming support. It all comes with an unspoken contract. Stay who I want you to be. The moment you start growing in a direction they didn't plan, the moment your evolution starts to threaten their dominance, the praise dries up. That's when the punishment begins. It might come in the form of passive-aggressive remarks. Maybe they start ignoring your achievements or acting different when something good happens to you. Maybe they downplay your success or say things like, "Oh, getting a little full of yourself," or "don't let it go to your head." These are not innocent comments. These are calculated jabs meant to bring you back to a size they can manage. The same voice that once told you, "You're amazing," will now say, "You think you're better than everyone." This shift is confusing, especially if you've grown to rely on their validation. You might start questioning yourself, wondering if you did something wrong, wondering why the person who once supported you now seems to resent you. The truth is, your growth represents loss to them, loss of control, loss of superiority, loss of the version of you that made them feel safe and in charge. When you outgrow their narrative, they lose the role they assign themselves in your story. Maybe they were your savior, your guide, your biggest fan. But now that you don't need saving, now that you're finding your own voice, that dynamic doesn't work anymore. And because their identity was tied to controlling you, they don't know how to respond except through punishment. Sometimes the punishment is emotional withdrawal. They may become cold, distant, and moody without explanation. They want you to notice the shift. They want you to feel the chill and wonder how to get back into their good graces. Other times, they become overtly critical. They may start fights out of nowhere, accuse you of changing, or act like you've betrayed them by growing. They project their insecurity onto you, making it seem like you're the problem, when really your transformation is making it harder for them to stay in control. They may even go as far as sabotaging your progress. If you're succeeding at work, they might plant seeds of doubt. If you're becoming more confident socially, they might suddenly pick at your appearance or your personality. This is not random. This is a response to feeling threatened. They believe that if they can dim your light, they can restore the balance in their favor. Praise kept you close. Punishment is meant to keep you small. The narcissist's goal is not your happiness, it's your dependence. They want to be the reason you feel good. And when you start finding that strength within yourself, they feel replaced. That's why the shift from praise to punishment happens so fast. The same behaviors they once celebrated now make them uncomfortable because those behaviors represent freedom. Freedom, your confidence, your clarity, your growth. All of it means they can no longer mold you into what they need you to be. Gaslighting is their weapon. Clarity is your shield. When a narcissist feels their control slipping, one of the most common tactics is gaslighting. It's not always loud or obvious. In fact, it's often subtle, slow, and designed to make you question your own reality. That's the point of gaslighting, to create confusion, self-doubt, and emotional instability so that the narcissist can reestablish dominance without having to physically force it. If they can convince you that you're too sensitive, too emotional, or too forgetful, they can keep you off balance. And when you're off balance, you're easier to manipulate. It often starts with simple denials. You bring up something they said or did, and they respond with, "That never happened," or "You're remembering it wrong." At first, you might brush it off. You think maybe you misunderstood. But over time, these denials stack up. You start questioning your own memory, your own perceptions. They twist facts, omit details, or rewrite entire conversations. If you express hurt or disappointment, they'll say you're overreacting or accuse you of being dramatic. They might even accuse you of being a problem. turning your genuine concerns into evidence of your instability. The goal is to make you so uncertain of yourself that you start turning to them for the truth. They want to become the authority over your reality. That way, when they decide to lie, deflect, or manipulate, you're less likely to call them out. You become dependent on their version of events because yours feels shaky and unreliable. Gaslighting erodes your sense of self, and the longer it goes on, the harder it becomes to trust your instinct. They don't always gaslight with words either. Sometimes it's in their actions, giving you the silent treatment and then acting like nothing happened, telling you they love you, then treating you with coldness or contempt, making promises and breaking them, then denying they ever made them. These mixed signals are a form of emotional sabotage. They leave you constantly guessing, constantly trying to decode what's real and what's not. That confusion is intentional. It keeps you distracted. While you're focused on figuring out what's going on, they're maintaining control. What makes gaslighting especially harmful is that it often happens in private, behind closed doors. To the outside world, the narcissist may seem composed, reasonable, even charming. This contrast makes it harder for others to believe you when you try to explain what's happening. That isolation deepens the confusion. You wonder if you're truly seeing things clearly because nobody else seems to notice the cracks. That's part of the trap. They create an alternate reality and expect you to live in it. But the antidote to gaslighting is clarity. Clarity comes from within. It starts with noticing the patterns and trusting your gut, even when you're scared to. It's about keeping track of what you experience, even if you're the only one who sees it. Writing things down, reflecting on conversations, recognizing the moments when things didn't add up, not so you can argue with them, but so you can stay grounded in your own truth. Clarity isn't about convincing the narcissist to see your side. It's about not losing sight of what you know to be real, no matter how many times they try to convince you otherwise. The moment you begin reclaiming your clarity is the moment their power over you starts to weaken. They rely on confusion to maintain control. When you start showing up with certainty, with awareness, with evidence and inner calm, it disrupts the cycle. You stop playing defense. You stop chasing their validation. You start standing on solid ground again. Silence and distance are your power moves. When dealing with a narcissist engaging in constant explanation, defending yourself, or trying to gain their understanding often plays right into their hands. They thrive in emotional chaos. They want to provoke you, pull you into arguments, and keep you explaining your worth to them. Every reaction feeds their ego, even the negative ones, because it means they still have access to your mind and emotions. That's why choosing silence and creating distance becomes such a powerful strategy, not out of pettiness, but out of protection and clarity. Narcissists crave attention. They want to be the center of your thoughts, even when the relationship is crumbling. If they can't get praise, they'll settle for conflict, because any response means they still matter. So when you stop reacting, when you stop justifying, when you stop feeding the fire, it throws them off balance. Silence sends a message that words can't. It tells them that you are no longer willing to participate in the emotional games, that you value your peace more than their chaos, that you've outgrown the need for their approval. Distance is just as essential. Physical space, emotional space, and even digital space. Reducing access to you is how you regain control of your life. Narcissists often use proximity to maintain influence. They monitor you, check in with fake concern, or send messages disguised as olive branches. But what they're really doing is testing your boundaries, seeing if they can still hook you. When you respond with distance, by not replying, not explaining, not returning to old patterns, they begin to lose their grip. This isn't about ghosting or punishing them. It's about reclaiming your energy. Narcissists are emotionally draining. Every interaction becomes a performance where you're expected to manage their ego, soften your truth, and ignore your needs. That's exhausting. Silence allows you to pause and regroup. Distance gives you the space to remember who you were before the manipulation began. In that space, you find your strength again. You hear your own voice clearly. You realize that the relationship revolved around keeping them satisfied, even at the expense of your own well-being. They may try to provoke you when you go silent. They'll test your boundaries with guilt trips, accusations, or even false apologies. But these are traps. They're not invitations to reconnect. They're attempts to reestablish control. When you respond to those traps, the cycle continues. When you stay silent, when you stay distant, you take away the fuel they depend on. They can't twist your words if you give them none. They can't spin a reaction into a narrative if you don't provide one. What you're doing is setting a boundary so strong it doesn't even require explanation. Silence and distance allow you to see the relationship for what it truly is. Without the noise, without the constant emotional reactions, you begin to see the manipulation more clearly. You recognize how much of your energy was spent on maintaining peace that only served their comfort. But you understand that your power was never in convincing them to treat you better. It was in choosing not to engage with someone who refuses to respect you. Healing means accepting they won't change. One of the hardest truths to come to terms with after dealing with a narcissist is that they are not going to have a moment of clarity where they suddenly understand the pain they caused. Narcissists operate from a place of deep denial and emotional immaturity. Their identity is built around avoiding responsibility, deflecting blame, and maintaining an illusion of superiority. Expecting them to evolve into someone self-aware and accountable is setting yourself up for continuous disappointment. Healing begins the moment you stop waiting for an apology, a confession, or even basic empathy. Narcissists often create hope cycles. They may give you just enough to keep you attached. An apology with no action, a promise with no follow-through, a brief period of kindness that quickly reverts back to manipulation. These moments feel like breakthroughs, like maybe they're starting to get it, but they're not. Those glimmers of decency are often just tactical pauses to reset the dynamic and regain control. They're not signs of growth, they're signs of strategy. Real change requires humility, reflection, and accountability, none of which are traits a narcissist typically develops. Accepting that they won't change doesn't mean you're giving up on people in general. It means you're releasing yourself from the illusion that you can love someone into healing. You can't out-nurture someone's unwillingness to evolve. You can't teach empathy to someone who sees vulnerability as weakness. You can't fix someone who doesn't believe they're broken. And you certainly can't keep sacrificing your well-being in the name of their potential. Healing is when you finally decide that your peace matters more than their promise to change. It's also important to grieve the relationship for what it actually was. You likely saw their charm, their potential, and their best moments and used those glimpses to fill in the blanks. But those blanks were never filled with consistency, care, or true connection. The good parts were real, but they were not the whole picture. Accepting the full reality without romanticizing the potential is how you begin to move forward. Healing doesn't happen all at once. It's not a straight line. Some days you'll feel strong and clear. Other days you'll feel confused and pull back into memories. That's normal. What matters is that you keep choosing yourself, even when it's difficult. You remind yourself that closure doesn't come from them finally understanding. It comes from you finally understanding that their behavior was never about your worth. It was about their wounds, their choices, their refusal to grow. When you stop trying to get the narcissist to see your value, you start showing yourself that value instead. You pour that energy back into your own healing, your own clarity, your own growth. You stop trying to change someone else and start becoming who you were always meant to be before they try to rewrite your story. Accepting they won't change frees you to change everything about how you see yourself and what you deserve.